other organizations. I've also been working with a number of other organizations, both in central government and in the private sector. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the experiences of that. I'm not talking with an NAO hat on. I'm talking as an individual, as a private sort of citizen, talking about my experiences. And given it's late at night and you've had a few drinks, I'm going to try to also be a little bit more provocative about what I think is going on, because I think we are in a very difficult situation right now with artificial intelligence. And I want to try to get some of that across to you in terms of where I think we are right now and some of the opportunities, but also the dangers of where we are. I'm wondering where to start. The best place to start is, so once I did the usual thing, I finished my degree, wrote software for a few years, got very bored with that very quickly and went and did a PhD in computer science. And having finished that, it was sort of, what do I do now? And to cut a long story short, I ended up going across to the United States and lived in the United States for about 20 years. And I went across to work at a federally funded research and development center that was called the Software Engineering Institute. And I'm not quite sure what I thought I'd be doing there, writing software, swanning around. I don't know what I thought I'd be doing. The first thing they asked me to do was to go out to the Federal Aviation Administration and look at their en route air traffic control system. And in broad terms, they said, we want you to go and take a look. It's roughly 10 years late and $1 billion over budget. And there are about 1,000 people working on it. Could you go and find out if it'll ever be finished? Could you tell us what the software architecture is of the thing? And can you tell us if it'll work? And I went, what? So the next 6 months, that's what I did. I tried to understand what the heck was going on here and why it was in this state. And there's a lot we could talk about what happened there. But a lot of it was because it's a large, complex system in a large, difficult environment. At that time, you can see I've been around the block a few times, a few years ago, that the idea of using software in these kinds of situations was relatively new. The way in which it was managed and handled and procured was a challenge. The way in which the contractors and the primes of the different agencies were dealing with that and its relationship with government and with the FAA in this case was challenging. And you're in the middle of that trying to say, what the heck is going on here? If I then move forward 20, 30 years to what I've been doing with the NAO and with other organizations right now, I'm working with the Ministry of Defense. I've been working with central government in some of the large agencies such as the Tax Office and Land Registry and the Ministry of Justice. Has anything changed? Within certain boundaries, are we still 10 years late and $1 billion over budget and 1,000 people trying to build systems? And I worry the answer is yes. And I also worry that it's not getting any easier. If you look at all of the figures over the last 5 to 10 years, particularly from a UK point of view, and you say, surely with all this digital productivity is going up, quality is getting better, systems are more on time, there's less issues, with more reliable, more stable systems. A lot of the data says, no, it's not. And that's incredibly concerning, particularly when a government is now going along saying, we've got a 22 billion hole or whatever the number is today. Don't worry, I've got magic pixie dust. It's called AI. And that's going to save us an awful lot of money. It's going to reduce the civil service. It's going to make our systems more effective. It's going to reduce the backlog. It's going to, wow. And I scratch my head and say, wow, we've got a lot of issues to deal with here. And then when I talked to those systems with the FAA, and I talked to the chief architect and the person in charge of procurement and the many, many other people that they lead you through to ask questions, and said, again, it's late at night, so excuse me for being rather blunt. If you must do this stupid thing, why are you doing it in this stupid way? And the answer was, because that's how we get audited. Oh. Yeah. And you say, when you dig into that, you say, what do you mean by that? Well, we were given money 5 years ago. We had a massive Gantt chart that filled the wall. On this day in June 2023, we're going to be releasing this. And all I've got is red, amber, green traffic lights, the whole RAG thing, my PER charts and my Gantt charts and a big stick. That's what I got. And that's what I do. And that's project management. And you start to shake your head and say, man, oh man, how's that going to work in an agile world with responsive systems that are evolving continuously and large language models underneath generative AI and predictive forecasting coming out of these new AI systems that are constantly evolving with feedback, that are being embedded inside our systems? Is that how we're going to manage those systems in the future? Now, of course, things have moved on. I'm being rather blunt and perhaps a little pessimistic. Things have moved on. But by and large, a lot of those middle kind of controlling processes and systems have not. What we might call the PM problem: project management, portfolio management, performance management, policy management, all those things that sit in the middle that either accelerates an organization or does the opposite. And of course, that's where a lot of the auditing system sits. And the accusation often, as you say, is blame the auditor. We can't go fast enough. They're inhibiting our innovation. They're making us go too slow. They're making us tick too many boxes. They want too much paperwork. And the opposite response comes from people like me in the software world saying, agile. Every month we do something different. Every 2 weeks we do a new sprint. Paperwork, that's for the old fogies. We don't believe in that anymore. Requirement specifications, what the hell is that? No, we're moving, we're edgy, we're doing new things. We got personas. We do these use cases. We don't do any of that stuff that spends all our time building truckloads of write-only documentation. So we got this tension growing inside organizations. And my worry is AI is making this worse. It's actually increasing that tension, not releasing it. So there's a couple of things going on. Have I frightened you enough yet? You need to go get another drink. Feel free if you want to go get another drink. So there's a couple of things going on. Yeah, good man. There's a couple of things going on here. Let me take my my Diet Coke here. Let me say, so where are we with digital? Is AI just another digital technology? In some ways, yes. All of the challenges we've had with large-scale project management, value for money, delivering on time, with digital projects, which we know hasn't gone hugely well. We're now going to have again with the AI, except we've got these new technologies that nobody even understands what they do. We used to have an old joke in the software world when we went to these projects like the FAA. If you drop it and it breaks, it's hardware. If you don't touch it and it breaks, it's software. Now we've got a third one. If you have no idea what the hell's going on and it isn't working, it's probably AI. So now we've got a third layer here, which is getting more complicated. So is this just another technology? In one ways, yes. But let me kind of reassure you that it's also, let me take my glass here. Let me give you an example of why I think things are a little different. So obviously I could put some technology in the base of this glass. Pretty easy to put something in. There's even like a little dimple here. I could put it inside. This miniature technology could do what? What could it tell me about this glass? Volume, did you say? Yeah, could tell me how full it is. You know, maybe it weighs it, so it can tell me how full it is. GPS, where is this? I could have my little app on my phone, where'smyglass.com. You know, Bluetooth to the phone, phone to the cloud. Now I can see where my glass is anywhere. Anybody can see where the glass is. Where's Alan's glass? Sorry? Substance. We could tell what's in it. You know, and you could tell whether it was, you know, what is it? Something in Coke or just Coke on its own. Whether it's whether the substance is, what should we call it? Whether it's been at the right temperature, whether it's been drunk by somebody else, whether it's something, you know, maybe there's a big red button on it says, don't touch it, somebody's already drunk from it, or it's at the wrong temperature. But maybe we could start to do other things with it. Maybe I can tell where all the glasses are in this room because I've got my app. So I can start to see the life of this glass, where it moves. When it came into service, was it clean when it was first used? How many times has this been used? Has it always been used for the same things? When is it ready to be disposed of? Because it's been used 100 times, or it's dirty, or it's chipped. I can start to manage things in a new way. I could start to do a different thing when I link it in with my wristband here, I've got one of these little cheap ones, but imagine you've got a more expensive one because I'm a cheapskate. These things do two things. There's a little green sensor inside on your skin. It does two things: heart rate variability and galvanic skin response. It's putting a little signal, looking at conductivity in your skin, and it's looking at the change in the color red in your vein, which gives heart rate variability. Those two things are essentially a stress monitor and a lie detector, 24/7 on your wrist, transmitting that data. If you Fitbit, who owns Fitbit? Who owns Fitbit? Google. Google owns Fitbit. 24/7, it knows a lie detector, stress monitor, your sleep patterns, when you're ill, when you sneeze, when you're excited by something you see in a store. It knows. Why is that? Why are we putting technology in a glass, on a person, in a car, in a building? Because we want to know context. We want to know why. We've gone from the digital world, which is to know what, to knowing why. I want to know why Alan's drinking 3 times a day, why he's not drinking enough, why he drinks too much beer, why he's moving around the room in a certain way, why he allows his glass to be used by somebody else. Kind of a silly example, okay? I want to know why. It's the search for context. Because once I know why, once I know the context within which you do things, does Alan drink more in the morning, in the afternoon, when he's with different people? Does he drink certain things at certain times of the day? What does he do immediately after and immediately before that? I want to know these things. Why? Because I can personalize. Because I can start to customize what you do. I can start to nudge you. Hey, Alan, notice you haven't drunk too much this morning. You might be getting a headache. I can tell what's coming off your wrist. Hey, so instead of Alan going for a drink, I've sent somebody around with a drink for you. It goes from a push to a pull. Hey, Alan, I've already sent the doctor a note to say that you haven't been drinking enough, and he's going to call you in for a checkup next week. Hey, Alan, I've noticed from your wrist and from your drinking that you're probably a bit dehydrated and you probably had too many beers last night. I've informed your insurance company. Whoa, okay. So we're starting to get into a world where we're starting to be able to do something different. Yes, it's about digitizing. The world over the last few years has been, we can digitize. A paper form becomes a PDF, becomes an online form, becomes something where our data automatically fills in this, and we don't need to actually fill in the data. That's kind of the way in which digitization in government has been used. If you look at the government digital service in the UK, almost all of its savings were, instead of, I'll make up the numbers, instead of £5 every time somebody goes to a visit for an appointment, or £1 every time somebody calls on the phone, it costs us 50 pence every time somebody self-serves on the internet and goes to our website, gov.uk. So all we do is add all of those up, make a big sum, look how many millions we've saved. And almost all of their statistics were about digitizing. Using traditional ROI, traditional economics, we digitized and we start to see the savings. AI is not about digitizing, it's about digitally transforming. We do things differently. We learn why. We redesign. We redo a lot of the things we used to do in a completely new way. That's really positive. The negative is, but the economics has changed. You don't calculate ROI in the same way. You don't calculate value for money. You don't calculate expense versus income versus the utility. This is going to be a really interesting time. What do we count? How do we manage? What do we think economics is? So there are a couple of things we can do about this. About 2 or 3 years ago, a really interesting set of books came out by 3 economists. Agrawal, Goldfarb, and Gantz. I don't know if anybody knows these books. The first one was called The Power of Prediction. Actually, the first one was called Prediction Machines. The second one was called The Power of Prediction. The Prediction Machines is called, the subtitle is The Simple Economics of AI. The second one, The Power of Prediction, was called The Disruptive Economics of AI. I recommend you read those books if you haven't. If you want a book on AI for you guys, don't read all the technical mumbo jumbo. Read those books by economists about what these mean. Again, very broadly, this is what the argument was. In the 1950s and 60s, computers were invented. They were technologies that allowed us to do very simple computations very quickly, very reliably. The last decade or so of the last 2 or 3 decades of the 20th century were about making that more and more true. Faster, cheaper, simple computations, and then wrapping those simple computations up to make them more complicated computations. So what did we do? We redesigned a lot of what we do to be able to be computed, to be computable. We transferred a lot of what we did to be computationally solutioned. That's how we spent a lot of our time. What just happened at the beginning of the 21st century is that the price of prediction has dropped through the floor. These are prediction machines. Data is now more widely available. We'll talk about data in a second. It can be transmitted very fast, and algorithms can run that give us new data, new information about this information that we've stored. So we can now predict much more effectively across many more data sources. And we can correlate data and learn new things. The price of prediction has dropped through the floor. So we're busy rewriting everything to be predictive problems. Let me take an example. Some of you look like you've been around the block like me. Some years ago, you put your foot on the brake of a car and it says, oh, Alan's just pressed the brake of a car. A liquid in a pipe gets compressed. It goes down the pipe to a disc on the wheel. It stops the car because the compression of the liquid, right? Round about the late 20th century, that became an electrical signal and a computational problem. So how much does Alan press the brake, send a computational signal, brake that much? What's just happened in a new car? Alan presses the brake. A piece of software runs and says, oh, Alan's pressed the brake. He's pressed it quite hard. I think he wants the car to stop. What shall we do? So this software runs and says, okay, well, what do we know? What do we know about the car? Well, when was it last serviced? What's the state of the engine? What do we know about the disc? What's the thickness of the disc? What's the braking? What do we know about the outside of the car? What's the state of the road? Is it raining? What did the last 100 cars do that went down this particular piece of road? What did this car do? What do we know about Alan? How's he driving? What's his driving habits? He might be doing full ECG on the steering wheel. Is he a bit stressed? What's in his calendar? Has he just come from a meeting? Has he had a few beers? Okay, now we know all of that. What shall we do now that Alan's pressed the brake that much? Whoa, when did we go from this being a simple, I press the brake, stop the car, to I'm now going to decide what to do based on a huge amount of information and feedback. And that will continually change as we drive. Whoa. Oh, and by the way, when Alan got in the car, should we have let him turn the engine on? Because he was a bit stressed, wasn't he? And he didn't drive so well this morning. And he hasn't had the car serviced. Maybe we shouldn't let the car actually start. Or maybe we should only let it drive at a certain rate, at a certain speed. Maybe we should report that to law enforcement, to his boss, to his wife. What should we do? Who's making those decisions? How is that software running? How's that being defined? Now, translate that into some of the areas we're working in DEFRA, where they're trying to decide about farms, who uses farms, how we use the land effectively, what kinds of things we grow, where that food goes, food waste. Now to transportation, we're trying to work out whether we allow people to travel in one way or another, how we do dynamic pricing, how we manage the roads, how we make sure we balance things like pollution versus how speedy we get people there. Now try and translate that to the Ministry of Justice. We're in a situation now where we're releasing people from prison because we haven't got enough space. We're in these very interesting compromising decisions right now about who we feed, who we treat in hospitals, who we put into jail and who we don't, what we do with the land. So what happens right now is whenever I'm in conversations about this with any folks in the private and the public sector, three things always come up. These are the three topics we always talk about: trust, risk, and value. Isn't that your world? Trust, risk, and value. That's your world. But I don't see you a lot at the table. Partly because people say they're the guys who stop us doing stuff. Partly because when I go to you, I don't always get great answers. Partly because I don't think you yet see that's your role, if you forgive me saying so. Your job is to be leading those conversations on risk, trust, and value. Not at the back end of, hey, you can't do that. Hey, I'm going to put you in front of the Public Accounts Committee. So a lot of, I think, what's got to happen right now is a reversal of roles, a different pressure on how we see those systems evolve, and a different set of capabilities being promoted in organizations, in government, across government, and particularly in regulatory authorities. I'm working with several. I'm also working with some people in the unions. That's really interesting. They're not always the negative situation, the negative kind of contributor that they're painted. Sometimes they are, a lot of times they are. And I think in a lot of the governance and auditing functions, we have to start to think differently, move differently, and allow these systems to evolve to a different way of working. It's not going to be the old world of we digitize, now AI has come along, just add that to the toolbox. Some of it will be like that for a while, but that isn't where it's going to head. We better be ready because it's going to be a tough road. You've all been very patient and you're all waiting for your next drink. Any comments or questions? Have I scared you enough before you had it? Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So there's the usual stick and carrot. So if you go to Vitality in the UK right now, they will give you, in quotes, an Apple Watch. Now, what that means is you pay inversely proportional to the amount of exercise you do. You exercise, I think it's 1,000 steps a week, a day, sorry. If you exercise 4,000 steps a day and you don't pay for the watch, you know, your monthly fee is wiped. You don't, you pay money. And why is that? For two reasons. One, they want to collect the data. The second one, healthy people are better for insurance, right? If you're doing exercise, you're less of it. And then there are insurance companies in the US who take that one step further and say, you don't wear it, we don't insure you because we don't have enough data. I think we're going to see a push and pull here between those that say we need that because so if you take the National Health Service, how are we going to drive down costs? The answer is going to be we're going to have to move from sickness to wellness. What we can't deal with right now is we wait till people are sick, they walk in, and then we try and fix it. What we're going to have to do is say we better make sure not so many people are sick. We've got to move to wellness. How are we going to do that? We can only do that if we start to instrument and measure. We can't do it any other way because self-reporting doesn't work. So we're going to have to make some choices about costs. How's that going to work? What's that going to mean? God, I wish I knew because that's going to be a real battle. And that's going to happen in a lot of situations when we move to prevention. That's going to be tricky. Thank you. You all. Like most people,